When people hear the phrase, someone with no friends, they usually imagine a life that's missing something. As if loneliness automatically means failure or brokenness or a flawed personality that somehow never learned to fit in. But here's the strange part, almost no one ever considers. Some people live their entire lives with no close friends at all, and yet they develop qualities, strengths, and inner abilities that most socially connected people never even come close to. Not because solitude is easy, but because it forces a kind of growth that only happens when your world is built around your own mind, your own choices, and your own emotional endurance. You start to realize that being friendless isn't always a punishment. Sometimes, it's a path. A path that shapes you quietly, while the rest of the world is too busy, too loud, too tangled in each other's expectations to ever understand what you've learned in solitude. This video isn't about telling you that you don't need friends. It's about showing you the hidden strengths you developed in the years when you felt most alone. Because the truth is, you didn't just survive loneliness. You grew inside it. And you may not realize it yet, but the things you learned in silence have already made you stronger, deeper, and far more self-aware than you ever give yourself credit for. And if you feel seen by conversations like this, you're welcome to like and subscribe. It lets us know this space matters to you. One of the first things that grows in that silence, long before you even notice it, is a kind of strength most people never develop. It's the way you learn to carry your life on your own. Most people rush into friendships out of habit, convenience, or fear of being alone. They hold on to people who no longer grow with them, simply because being surrounded feels safer than being silent. But you had mornings when you woke up to problems with no one to talk them through, nights when your thoughts felt heavier than your body, and the only person available to comfort you was the one in the mirror. You became your own listener, your own stabilizer, your own source of clarity. And while it didn't feel like strength at the time, it quietly became one. Because emotional independence doesn't come from books or advice or pretending to be strong. It comes from surviving seasons where you had no choice but to grow stronger. Think about it. Most people never develop that ability. They panic at the first sign of loneliness. They crumble when support disappears. They lose themselves when someone pulls away. And without realizing it, this became one of your hidden advantages, the quiet, unbreakable stability that forms inside a person who has walked through life mostly on their own. And with that stability comes a shift, one that changes what you allow into your life. You start to develop a different relationship with peace, the one that comes from being free of other people's chaos, their expectations, their sudden storms. You stop craving the noise. You stop chasing the social norms that exhaust you. You stop confusing being included with being at peace. Because the truth is, many people aren't looking for friendship. They're looking for somewhere to put their chaos, somewhere to unload their frustrations, their dramas, their emotional clutter. But you didn't become that place. You learned to protect your calm, long before anyone taught you how. Think about it. Most socially connected people never learn that skill. They stay tangled in other people's emotions, other people's crises, other people's unfinished stories. But you learned the difference between company and peace, and you chose peace. And whether you realize it or not, that choice has been shaping the direction of your life in a way that most people never experience. And with that peace comes another quiet advantage, one that shapes not just how you feel, but how you move through the world. When you don't have many friends, you learn to build your life without an audience. There's no pressure to impress anyone. No need to perform. No constant comparison. No expectation to match someone else's pace. Your goals become your own. Your routines become your own. Your progress becomes something you measure in private, at a pace that makes sense only to you. Have you ever noticed this in yourself? Most people don't realize how deeply their lives are shaped by the people watching them. They chase goals they don't truly want. They follow timelines that aren't theirs.
They make choices just to keep up, to belong, to look successful in someone else's eyes. But when you've lived most of your life without that social gravity, you learn something rare. You learn how to focus. Not the frantic, anxious focus that comes from fear of falling behind, but the steady, quiet focus that grows when no one is pulling you in 100 different directions. And this is where everything shifts. You work on the things that matter to you. You explore interests without needing permission. You improve at your own rhythm, without the noise of comparison distorting your path. And slowly, you realize that building your life in solitude gave you something many people never get. A sense of direction that comes from within, not from the crowd. And that inner direction is one of the most powerful, overlooked advantages of having walked so much of your path alone.
And as that inner direction strengthens, another subtle advantage begins to reveal itself, one you often recognize when you look back. Solitude sharpens your ability to see people clearly, because the more clearly you see yourself, the more clearly you begin to see others. When you haven't been surrounded by constant company, you develop a kind of emotional eyesight that many people are unaware of. You've been doing this your whole life and never noticed. You notice small things, the warmth in someone's tone, the sincerity behind their words, the difference between attention and intention. You sense authenticity. You feel sincerity. Because you've lived without noise for so long, you can hear the difference between someone who wants to know you and someone who simply wants something from you. Most people, surrounded by constant interaction, lose that sensitivity. They get used to being overstimulated, over-involved, caught in a blur of personalities and expectations. But your solitude taught you to listen, to observe, to feel the emotional temperature in a room without being swept into it. This clarity is a hidden advantage most people never discover. The ability to choose people not out of fear, not out of loneliness, but out of understanding. You don't welcome everyone. You don't chase anyone. You simply recognize truth when you see it, and you know how rare it is. And that ability, born from years of observing life from a slight distance, is what prepares you for the kind of connection that actually deserves you when it finally arrives. When you look at your life lived without any friends, from the outside, it's easy to focus on what's missing. The friendships you never had, the conversations that didn't happen, the empty spaces that never quite filled. But when you look at your life from the inside, from the path you've actually walked, a different picture begins to appear. You realize that solitude didn't just take things from you, it gave you things too. Strength, clarity, depth, focus, peace. A way of seeing yourself and others that only grows in the quiet. And maybe that's the real hidden advantage of having no friends at all. You didn't build your life around other people. You built it around yourself, your values, your pace, your questions, your inner world. And that means, when connection finally does appear, the right connection, the rare kind, you'll recognize it. You'll value it. You'll choose it consciously, not out of fear, not out of loneliness, but out of understanding. And in a world full of noise, that is a rare thing to have.